Welcome, friends. This is JCT TV. This is Bible study for the 21st century. You know, friends, some of you are watching JCT for the first time, or maybe saw it for the first time last week on DirecTV, on the National Religious Broadcasters channel in America. This program runs nationally, Sunday nights across America, but it also runs nationally, Sunday nights across Canada. So we've got a North American ministry. Hello. How cool is that? Today I have a young pastor who's a terrific interview, and then we'll continue with our studies through Matthew.
Jim Cantelon Today is a program dedicated to the teaching of the good news of Jesus Christ. This all through the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. JCT also brings to you encouraging testimonies and stories from Christian leaders all over the globe. If this program has added value to your life, would you please consider becoming a partner? To do so, simply contact us by phone, mail, or online.
If you've been watching JCT over the last few weeks, you're very keen to see Kevin Shepard again, as am I. He's a very successful young pastor, and we're just having a great conversation. I've already said to him I want to have him back, and I'm sure you'd like to have him back too. But Kevin, let's pick up. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and I want to do it now, that you have gone through, and perhaps are still going through, a very serious health challenge. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a significant challenge for me. I struggle to say it's very serious because I put it in the context of some of the other challenges I walked through.
Excuse me, it's very serious. Okay, I will say as an outsider here,
yeah.
When I heard about what you were facing, you were facing potential paralysis.
Yeah, so I had herniated 2 discs in my back quite seriously.
And trying to lift too much weight.
Yeah, I was doing it the wrong way when I was working out. So that's on me.
Oh, well, shoot.
Yeah, and so I was in the hospital for 3 weeks, was unable to walk, was in a great deal of pain, and couldn't use my left leg at all. The signals from my brain were being pinched off at the root nerve, and I couldn't move my left leg, was in risk of not being able to get it functioning again, yeah.
You were actually crawling into work, as I recall?
Yeah, at one point.
Yeah, and you should have been rebuked for that.
Yeah,
but,
yeah,
I mean,
I was. But I was the boss, so what are they going to do?
You have this strong work ethic, but seriously, yeah. When I heard about that, I thought, what?
Yeah.
He's crawling into his office? You went through several months of, will I or will I not be able to use my left leg again? Mm-hmm. You must have had your dark moments.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I'm thankful for the grace of God in the midst of it all. And you have questions about what your life's going to be like and how will you adjust. And lots of great supporting, loving people encouraged me, praying for me and all that. It made you notice the body of Christ and the church spring into action in ways that you just hope it will. And I was so thankful for that in that season. But at one point in time when I had not heard from the surgeon and we were supposed to have the surgery done and struggling with what that means and what to do. I was laying on a cot in our living room on my right side. It was the only way. I couldn't lay on my back. I couldn't sit up. I couldn't walk. And I had a very out loud conversation with the Lord. Yeah. And I just, again, felt like I said a couple of weeks ago, felt like, God speaks to us often. I just felt this deep sense in my heart that God said, this is a divine delay, to just be patient. which is a challenge for me. I'm type A driven, and it was, but I felt like kind of a peace in my heart at that time. And so a couple hours later, my wife had come home. I told her about that. She didn't have the same level of peace that I did because I had the experience that she didn't.
Yeah.
But from that moment on, I just continued to trust the Lord. And we got off of all the heavy drugs and got working with an incredible physiotherapist who's been helping me so much. And I'm not 100%, but I'm very thankful.
And your surgeon keeps putting off. You haven't heard from him for a year.
Correct.
Which astonishes me.
Yeah.
But in that period of time, you've actually been improving.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I sometimes describe it like I feel like I'm running a marathon an inch every day. Like I'm going as hard as I can in order to rehab and get better, but the increments of improvement seem small. But when I look back month after month, there's significant improvement. And so I'm very thankful.
How many pills a day were you on?
23.
23 a day.
Yeah.
For how long?
That would have been a couple of months, and then I started to pull it back after that.
Now, did any of these pills include opioids?
Yes. Yeah.
Now, that's a big topic.
Yeah, it is.
Opioid addiction.
Yeah.
Can you understand?
Absolutely. You know, I've walked through a few families in our church individuals, one was a former hockey player who injured his back and got on opioids and got addicted, and it really devastated his family in many ways. And walked through the challenge of that and tried to bring grace and compassion. But after I went through what I went through, man, I understood in way deeper measure how he could have become addicted. And I've got a lot more grace and compassion for those who are wrestling with things like that. But so I was on, so Oxy is one level, then hydromorphine, then hydromorphcontin. That's what I was on heavy dose, and thankfully was able to get off that with no problems.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you have to work at it?
Oh yeah, I mean we weaned it off slowly. I didn't have any sort of addictive craving towards it, which I'm thankful for, but could understand how people could.
Do you have addictive tendencies generally?
Not typically.
Yeah.
I tend
and
to.
I think that's a big player
Yeah.
in this. I'm not saying it's a general rule, but often those who are
Yeah.
tending to having, if you will, addiction issues,
Yeah.
they can be easily ambushed by opioids.
Yeah.
There are doctors who are now being called to account by the law for irresponsible distribution of opioids. That's something that probably should be done.
For sure. I just left a leadership staff meeting this morning where we were talking about how the value of seeing the unseen, seeing people in our communities that aren't normally seen. We were looking at human trafficking and all kinds of issues. And one of the things we were looking at was the statistics in our own community about opioid addiction, how many opioid overdoses there were in our community, and just trying to grapple with the statistics where you just don't see it or know it exists, and trying to figure out how we as a church can come alongside families and individuals who are struggling in those kinds of areas. And it's pandemic levels in many ways in many cities.
You mentioned your wife a few minutes ago. She's journeyed with you through this.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of burden does this kind of a situation bring to bear on her shoulders?
My wife is an amazing, amazing person. She is so filled with grace, and she has to be married to me. But she is just so beautiful and supportive, empowering and strong. And it does place a burden on the family, though, and in more ways than you really realize. I actually have so much compassion for family members who are walking with people who have health challenges. My son had open heart surgery 5 years ago. And we just understand the ripple effect for family members. And so, yeah, it's a challenge for her. We wanted to make sure that she had enough support around her with friends and church family. And again, that's why the church is so important. When the church actually does what it's supposed to be, it's a family. God places the lonely in families. The church is supposed to be a family that reach out and care for people. And
so the church is not a building, it's not an institution,
no.
It's a community.
Yeah. It's full of, and I would say this, I understand the church isn't perfect. I understand we got problems, and the church has its own struggles and infighting and all those things. But in these kinds of moments, you actually notice the really good things about church. Churches are filled with really good people. who are really sacrificial and really compassionate and really loving and really good and kind. And yeah, does it come along with the other stuff? Yeah, what family doesn't?
Yeah.
But man, I believe in the church. I believe in God's purpose through the church and his people in that way.
Speaking of the church in those terms, for many people, church has nothing but negative connotations.
Yeah.
You know, you talk about the good people in the church. Well, they remember the person who was backbiting. They remember the person who, you know, basically cut the legs out from under them with their gossip or their slander. They remember, you know, this lovely, godly, purported board member who was abusing little girls in the Sunday school class. I've interviewed people, I won't mention names, but some very high-profile people over the years who were so abused and or put off, imprinted negatively by the church as children, that there's no way they'd be caught dead in a church today. I can understand that.
Mm-hmm.
How does one help someone to overcome that? I mean, what do you say to someone who says, my whole experience with church has been negative?
Yeah. So it takes a long time. I think too often in our fast-paced society, we want to just fix someone's hurts by just a short-term statement.
Right.
And I think in the same, so I often say, don't allow a short-term statement to ruin a long-term relationship. And you also, by the same token, can't have a short-term statement fix long-term issues.
Right.
But often I will sometimes say specifically to someone who's really hurt, I will earn your trust. I will be the kind of person in your life that you can depend on, that you can love. And I understand that you've got issues with the church, but I want to be your friend and I want to be the person that can earn your trust. I think when you take that approach, I see that that's what Jesus did. Religiosity was not awesome when Jesus was around either. But Jesus took the approach to build relationship, to be that bridge. And we're not trying to get people to come to church. We're trying to help ourselves be the church that Jesus wants it to be. I think that's the only way.
And what is ultimately, I've got a minute and a half, what is the value added? You know, whenever I've driven past your church, I'm out speaking all over the place, and I live in the same city you do. I go by your church, you know, you've got 3 services. I'm at an early service, I come by, and then maybe it's the second service in your church. The place is jammed. I mean, I can't see one space in a parking lot. I'm, whoa, this is amazing. Why are they there? What's the value added? Why come to Kevin Shepherd's church?
Yeah, sometimes I wonder myself, I gotta say. I mean, sometimes I wake up in the morning, I'm like, is anybody going to come to church?
But there's obviously some value there.
Yeah.
And any sense of what that value is from their perspective?
Yeah, I think they come and they experience God.
Yeah.
They do experience God. Yeah. So many times we have people come to our church that don't have any background in church, and they're like, what is it? They're crying in the middle of worship going, why? What's happening? There's the presence of God there. That's not something I can do or anybody can do. That's all God. And there's great people, truly. They build great, deep, connected relationships. Loneliness is one of the biggest epidemics of our culture, and they're finding relationship and connection.
There you go, man. I think you hit the nail on the head on that one. Loneliness. If you're feeling lonely today, friends, you're in good company. And I don't want to be trite, and I don't want to give a quick fix, but I will say this. There is a friend who sticks closer than a brother.
Amen.
That's why Jesus came, and he's available. Just to a simple heart's prayer, God be merciful to me. I qualify. I need you in my life. Kevin Shepherd's joining me again next program. I'm really happy about that, but now we'll take a little break, and I'll be back with our teaching segment as we continue through Matthew right after this.
Friends, as you know, Jim Cantelon has been offering Cantelon's Casual Commentary as a Bible study supplement to his ongoing exposition of St. Matthew's Gospel on JCT TV. He's excited to offer Volume 4, which completes the Matthew study. The Transfiguration, Triumphal Entry, Crucifixion, and Resurrection of Jesus Christ are all covered in this volume. Like the first 3 volumes, it's concise, captivating, and casual. To order your copy, you can call, write, or go online. Request Cantelon's Casual Commentary Volume 4, and for a gift in any amount, it will be sent to you. When you place your order, also consider becoming a monthly partner. Remember, your gifts help us build this ministry.
Now, the last 2 programs, I've just covered a few verses of Matthew 27 because we're into what's called the Passion. Jesus is before Pilate, and there's a lot of background stuff that needs to be covered for you to fully appreciate what's going on in the text. So we've got Jesus standing before Pilate, who was this lowercase official from Rome, who as a punishment had been given the procuratorship of Judea. Nobody wanted that job. The only, plus side was living in Caesarea, beautiful beachside town. So let's pick up on verse 11. Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, saying, "Are you king of the Jews?" Now, this was the accusation that, the temple authorities, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, and the Sanhedrin were making, and they were trying to present themselves to Pilate as assisting Rome in, arresting this dangerous zealot, this insurrectionist who is going to absolutely destabilize the Roman Empire. Jesus says to him, "It's as you say. You said it, not me. They say it, not me." And while he was being accused by the chief priests, what's going on there? They're yelling. They're drowning Jesus out. They're drowning Pilate out. But he says he's king of the Jews. He says he's king of the Jews. He says he can destroy the temple in 3 days and rebuild it. This guy is dangerous. Okay? While that's going on, Jesus says nothing. What's the Old Testament say? As a sheep before her shearers is dumb, so he opened not his mouth. Yeah. Then Pilate said to him, "Do you not hear how many things they testify against you?" But Jesus answered not one word. There's great strength and power in silence. Maybe some of you had this experience when you were a child and your father was disciplining you. And you could see the displeasure on his face. He said nothing. And you start to weep because the silence is more deadly than anything he might say verbally. Silence can be deadly. So the governor marvels at this in verse 14. Verse 15, now at the feast the governor was accustomed to releasing to the multitude one prisoner whom they wished. This was to placate, the mob, all right? And at that time they had a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. Therefore, when they had gathered together, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus who is called Christ?" For he knew they had handed him over because of envy. While he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent to him, saying, "Have nothing to do with this just man, for I have suffered many things today in a dream because of him." Let's just go back here for a minute. Barabbas's, just seeing, there's so many versions out there, right? Yeah, in the New International Version, they have in verse 16 what the Greek text has. Barabbas was his last name, Bar Abbas. Bar means son of, Abbas, father, son of father. That's a kind of a general term. It could be his father's name was Abbas, Abba, his father, but his first name was Jesus. Did you know that? Two Jesuses here. He was a notorious zealot, well known, so much so that the Romans had to find him hiding in some cave somewhere, arrested him and thrown him in jail, and the plan was to crucify him. He was politically dangerous. He was ultimately the insurrectionist that the Sadducees and the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin were trying to nail, on Jesus. Very dangerous man. Interestingly, Jesus Barabbas, Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus Barabbas was the true enemy. Jesus of Nazareth was the falsely accused enemy. But what happens? Well, history is full of injustices, right? We know what happens, and we'll get to it. But it's interesting that Pilate had the insight. Where is it here? Yeah. He knew that they had handed him over because of envy. Envy? There was no way they ever could have achieved the popularity that Jesus did. Or for that matter, the notoriety. Jesus was not just a threat to the temple economy. He was a threat to the civil and religious stability of Judea. He was, without question, the biggest threat to oral law, the fence the Pharisees and the scribes and rabbis had built around the law. He was the biggest threat that they'd ever seen. And even as they felt threatened by Jesus, there was something deep within them that envied him his power and his wisdom. He was never bested in a debate. He continually made fools of them. And they were smart guys. They recognized intelligence when they saw it. They couldn't believe his learning, his insight, and yet his down-home way of articulating truth in a way that the Am Ha'aretz, the people of the land, the illiterate, uneducated peasantry, could understand and appreciate. Pilate sees a lot of envy there. And of course he was right. So he's sitting on his judgment seat. This would be a kind of a prominent throne-like thing over a big plaza. And the people were jammed in there, in their hundreds, if not a few thousands, crying, crucify him, and he raises his hand to silence them, and he's about to give his judgment. His wife sends a message to him. He opens it up. Have nothing to do with this just man, for I've suffered many things today in a dream because of him. What? But the chief priests and elders persuaded the multitudes. They're inciting the crowd. Crucify him, crucify him. You've been at, big NFL games or, NFL, NBA, what's hockey, NHL. You've been to some of those big games, watch them on television. One person starts shouting some slogan. Before you know it, got 18, 20,000, 60,000 people shouting the same slogan. Crucify him, crucify him, crucify him. And eventually it picked up. So it's the chief priests and the elders who are the chief cheerleaders here in this regard. And say, we want Barabbas. We want Barabbas. Give us Barabbas. Even as Pilate asks, who do you want me to give to you? So what am I going to do with Jesus, who's called Christ? Now, Pilate was not dumb. He may not have been the sharpest pencil in the box, but he wasn't dumb. He used the word Christ deliberately, because Christ in Greek means Messiah, means anointed one. To this day, Jesus is referred to by many in Israel as Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus or Joshua, the Messiah. Christ means Messiah. They all said, let him be crucified. So what's he done? Pilate asks. They don't answer. They just cry even greater, let him be crucified, him, crucify him, crucify him. And when Pilate saw he could not prevail at all, but rather that a tumult was rising, He took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I'm innocent of the blood of this just person. That really was the view of Rome, from this official of Rome. But even as he's seeing him as just, he's going to bow to the pressure of the people, and he's going to crucify him. Only Pilate can answer for this weakness. All the people answered, and boy, this is a gripper. His blood be on us and on our children. It wasn't just Judeans who were shouting here. There were slaves, there were servants, there were business people who lived in Jerusalem from all over the world. This is not just one nation. This is a multitude of nations. This is the United Nations, if you will, saying his blood be upon us and our children. They had no idea what they're saying. And this is why later on the cross, Jesus says, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. They know not what they're saying. And Pilate, he released Barabbas to him. When he had scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. Whoa.
JCT TV is the official voice of WOW, working for orphans and widows. Jim Cantelon is the founder of WOW and has been ministering to orphans and widows in distress for 18 years. WOW's focus is home-based care for the dying. The horizon is vast, with thousands of the least of these in Africa and India. WOW depends on your generous support. To do so, simply contact us by phone, mail, or online.
We've been on the air now with JCT for almost 4 years, and the audience just keeps growing, which pleases me greatly. A big part of that growth, I think, is that people want not only to see the Bible and hear the Bible exposed on Scripture, but they also want to read Cantelon's Casual Commentary. For those of you watching the program for the first time, I've written 4 booklets, tranches as I call them, on the book of Matthew. Altogether about 160 pages. I put them in this size so that they fit into an envelope, fit into your purse, your Bible, your pocket. But great news, coming out soon is Mark. Now, I haven't started Mark yet on the program, but I will be very soon because I'm almost finished Matthew. But if you want these, by all means, just communicate that to us. You see on the program how to do it. You got our coordinates. We'd love to send it to you. And when you ask for it, remember your very best ministry gift, because it's not just Bible teaching. We also, as you can see on the program, work with orphans and widows around the world.